Hey everyone, thanks for stopping by my channel, Ask Lois the Relatable Therapist. And this channel is for blended families, whether it's blended family issues, blended family challenges, whether it's for all the wonderful things that happens as you go on this journey in the blended family, anything that relates to the blended family. That's what this channel will be about. And so go ahead and click that subscribe button and click the notification bell so you won't miss a thing. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Lois Godot, and I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor, and I've been in the blended family for 27 years. So today, I decided to go back into the vault and pull out a workshop that I did called Before the Blend. A lot of times people get into the blended family relationships, and I've heard them say, I wished I'd known this before I got into the blended family. So today, I'm going to talk about two of the challenges in the blended family, things that you should know before you get into the blended family. Next time we meet, I'll have part two. So today is part one, and the next time will be part two. So if you're ready, let's go ahead and get started with Before the Blend workshop. The first thing I want to do is I want to look at some statistics. And I took these statistics from the U.S. Bureau of Statistics, and I also took some of them from the Step Family Foundation. So I'm going to actually quote from both of those places. About 70% of people who divorce wind up remarrying, and at some point in their life, they're going to remarry. And out of those marriages, 66% of the second marriages will involve children. Hey, how you doing? Glad you were able to get on. And then those are just the people that are married. But if we look at the people that are cohabitating or living together, the statistics go up even higher. So it's 80% of people who have children in those relationships take a second chance on marriage. What have you done to prepare for that? What have you researched? What have you checked out? What have you asked about? And for most people, the answer is nothing. I've done nothing to ensure that my blended family is going to be successful, because a lot of people are entering into the blended family relationship and not really having a clue or an idea of what they're really stepping into, because it's not like the nuclear family, because there's not a roadmap. There's nothing to show you how to do this. And so you're going in blind, but you really don't have to, because there are things that you can know about the unique dynamics of the blended family. Here's a scenario. You're in a new relationship and you feel like you've been given a second chance. So been given a second chance to get it right. So you and your significant other feel like this is going to be a happily ever after. Your dreams are going to come true. This is it. The children, they're going to be on board. We're going to work out fine. Everyone's going to love everyone. And so we're going to put our best foot forward, and this is going to work out fabulously. And so we call this romanticizing. So you're starting to romanticize how your blended family is going to be, and how the step siblings, they're going to get along, and how the in-laws are going to get along. And you're just romanticizing this whole thing, and that you and your significant other, even though it's a blended family, we're going to have plenty of time together, just like we had before we decided to move in together. And so you have all of these expectations about what's going to happen. How many of you have thought that when I get in this blended family, everything is going to work out fine, and there's nothing that I really need to do? Because that's not what's going to happen. So I tell people to kind of think of it like a house. So you have a home that's furnished, and you know where everything is at, and everything is in its place. And then all of a sudden there's a fire. The fire comes in and it destroys everything. So now you have to have that house rebuilt. And so when you rebuild the house, you realize that things are not going to be the same. Where the fireplace once was, you probably can't have a fireplace there anymore. Where the bedroom was, you can't have it there anymore because of new codes and restrictions and regulations. So even though you have a new house, it's another house, but it's going to be different. So kind of think about that with your blended family. It's not a restoration of what was, it's a totally new construction. And the reason why it's a totally new construction is because there's no building plan. There's no roadmap. You got to totally construct this based on how your family is situated and how your family is set up. And once you're in this blended family and you realize that I need to face the issues that come into the family head on, because if you don't, you're going to have another fire in the house and you're going to have to start all over again. Okay, because you go in and you think it's going to be one way, and then it doesn't turn out that way. It turns out to be something totally different. But I found that there are four major problems that if you start off right and you get these straight, then it'll make it a little easier. And the very first one I want to start off with is you have to be able to set realistic expectations and understand that because there are children involved, it's going to be more difficult and the relationship is going to be more challenging. So stop for a minute and think when you before you even had kids, when you and your significant other, when it was just you two, just think of the challenges that you had then. The challenges to communicate with one another, to get to know one another, to make time for one another in between your busy schedule. So you realize that. Now you're going to throw children in the mix, and not just children, but children that are not your biological children, that are not children from your origin, which means from you and your partner. And you're throwing these children in there and they have their own mindsets. And most of the time, the children come in after they're like 5 or 6 years old. They don't come in as babies. Every now and then kids will come into the relationship as babies, but most of the time they may be 5 or 6 years in and they've had a chance to develop their own personality. And it is something totally different than what you would think it would be. So now these kids are in the mix, and along with the kids comes their grandparents and their aunts and uncles, and also their biological parents. So you have all of this in the mix. Now, do you think it's going to be the same way it was when you and that significant other started off? There's no way it could be the same because it's a lot of different components now. I like to think of it as, you're juggling with two balls, and all of a sudden someone throws a third ball in, and then a fourth ball, and then a fifth ball. And all of a sudden you have seven balls that you're trying to juggle, and it becomes more and more difficult as more and more things become added. I heard someone make a statement that said, how hard can it be? How hard can a blended family really be? After all, you're both adults. And if you think that it's going to be easy, then I'm letting you know now you're in for a rude awakening. If you think that because I'm an adult and he's an adult, everything will work out, you're in for a rude awakening. That's how I went into my blended family relationship 26 years ago. I thought, he's an adult, I'm an adult, we're both responsible people. How hard can this be? This will work out fine. But boy, was I mistaken. And boy, was I in for a rude awakening because it was very difficult because I didn't understand all of the components that I understand now. So let's look at two expectations that are unrealistic that you need to get straight in order for this relationship to work. I talked a little bit in the beginning about some statistics. I'm going to give you a couple more. So the rate of failure for second marriages is 67%, and for third marriages is 74%. So when you start off in your nuclear family and then you get divorced, there's a 66% chance that you'll be remarrying after you divorce. And then for second marriages, it goes up. And for third marriages, it goes up. And if by chance you have a fourth marriage, it will go up. So things are going to be more and more difficult because the children are involved and there's more components that are involved in the relationship. In a nuclear family, you have time to form those bonds. Even before children become a part of the picture, like I said earlier, you and your significant other, you have time to bond together. You have time to develop that relationship. And then once your significant other gets pregnant and has a child, you and your significant other have 9 months to bond with that child in utero. And then when the child comes out, you have time to reach those milestones with the child. And so you're developing that relationship, and everything is fluid and everything is organic, that relationship. And so from day one, that bond has started. In a blended family, you don't have that luxury. That bond has not started. When you get in a blended family, it starts right away. You may have a 5-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 13-year-old, a 15-year-old, toddlers, preteens, adolescents, and you're all under the same roof and you don't know one another. And now you have to try to get to know one another. You don't have the luxury of waiting, like in the nuclear family, for things to organically happen, for the milestones to be met. You don't have time to nurture them and to grow them. You don't have time to celebrate those milestones. You don't have the time to do all of that because the kids are right there. So you have to start right where they're at. And a lot of times, that bond, it takes a period of time before it happens. It takes a period of time before it happens. It doesn't mean that you don't bond with your stepchildren, but what it means is that you're going to have a different kind of bond. And sometimes it takes people a while to kind of accept that because they look at it as a negative. Well, you're saying you don't love my kids. No, that's not what it's saying. It's saying there's a different kind of love because remember, when you started out with your bio kids, you started out with them in utero and you birthed them and the milestones and the times to bond. And now when you get into a relationship, that child is 9 or 10 years old. How can you have that same bond? And so that's one of the first thing is to get realistic about the type of relationship that you will have with your bonus children. Does anybody have a question or a statement or something that they would like to say on that? Because that gets a lot of communication. Whenever I say that, people have a lot of different comments about them. And one of the comments that they say a lot, it just seems like they feel like someone saying you're not going to love their children, but that's not it at all. Because that's one of the things I struggled with in my blended family when my husband and I first got together, with wanting him to love the kids just as much as his, and to some degree, him wanting me to want to do and the same thing for my bonus kids as my kids, but it just wasn't there. But I grew to love them as that bond grew. I grew to love them. Okay. So the second unrealistic belief is that it won't take long to blend the family. And that's another one that you really have to get clear about, is because when you say the term blended family, it sounds like a smooth transition. Just think about whenever I hear the word blend, I think about a blender. And I think about how you put things in a blender and it just blends together really smoothly and you can't see one from the other. And that's what blended family, it sounds like, it's just going to blend smoothly and it's not going to take long. But again, that's an unrealistic expectation because you're thinking, oh, we're going to be this one big happy family and everything is going to blend. But remember, blending a family is a long-term investment. So just think about that. Blending a family is a long-term investment. And you can look at blending a family as not a quick fix, but something that's going to happen over a period of time. And that's where some people struggle with, because they think, well, we've been doing this a year. Why are we still struggling? We've been doing this 2 years. Why are we still struggling? Can anyone tell me how many years you think it will take to blend a family? Okay, someone said 10 years. Wow. You just think that's a long time, 10 years. Do you think if you thought it would take 10 years for your relationship to blend, that you would get in this blended family? Somebody said Russ said an eternity. That's funny. An eternity. So if you thought it was going to take forever for this blend, would you even get in this relationship? But you get into it because there's hope that it's going to blend. Statistics say it takes 5 years, but it doesn't have to take 5 years because there are things that you can do to kind of help it along the way. And one reason why it takes 5 years is because a lot of times some of the techniques and that you need to help blend the family, people don't realize that. Like I said early on, I wished I had this training, this workshop, this teaching, whatever you want to call it. I wished I had this early on because it would have made something so much more smoother. Just by even knowing that it takes 3 to 5 years. That would have gave me, okay, so when it's not blended at 1 year, I wouldn't get frustrated. I wouldn't be like, oh my God, something's wrong with my relationship. Yeah, you were off by 5 years. So you wouldn't be thinking there's something wrong with my relationship. You'd realize that, you know what, this is the process, the time that it takes for this relationship to blend. You would be okay with it instead of feeling frantic like I was, like, oh my God, what am I doing wrong? Something's wrong with me. Something's wrong with them. And sometimes when you know the reason why it's taken so long, it makes it a little easier. Because remember, a blended family is ever evolving. I think that's what Russ said when he said in eternity. It's ever evolving. And even when you get to the place where you respect one another, where you hear one another, where you have those bonds, you're still over time developing that relationship, learning one another. I told you I've been in this blended family relationship for 26 years, and I'm still learning my bonus children. And they're still learning me because every decade, as an individual, you change. And so they're getting to learn and getting to know me. And so it's going to be an ever evolving. And so once you get clear about these things, and once you understand that in the blended family, that it's going to take time to blend, then you won't be so upset. Then you won't be so frantic. Then you won't be like, oh my God, what am I doing wrong? Because remember, there's additional factors. I was just talking about the blended family in the home. Remember, you have the ex-partners, whether your ex or his ex, and whether they're a high conflict, we call high conflict when they like keep up a lot of drama, or whether they're a passive and they really don't want to do what it takes to be involved in the kid's life and to help you raise the kids. Or it could be the in-laws, the grandparents. Maybe they don't want to accept the children. And then there's a whole nother teaching on that with the grandparents because they need time to bond. Maybe it might be the aunts and uncles. So you have all of these factors that are in the mix. And so when you think it's going to blend really quickly, it's going to take a while before the blend happens. There are two mindset shifts that are crucial shifts that are needed in order for the blended family to work. And the first one is you must have an open mind. And an open mind is that things are going to be done differently. And if you don't remember anything else, remember this statement. The quicker you realize this, the better off you'll be. The quicker you realize this, the better off you'll be, is that I have to have an open mind and that blended families are different. And I have to do things differently to make this work. So why do you say that? Okay. So when you're in a family of origin, or like I say, the nuclear family, everything just unfolds organically. It's like the love unfolds organically, the communication, the trust, and everything just happens so wonderfully. And you just roll with whatever happens. But in a blended family, you don't get that luxury. Things don't just happen like that. So in a blended family, you have to consciously think about things. I'll give you an example. Let's just say you have a 5-year-old bonus daughter, and her and her mother, either her mother and her father, either separated or divorced. And now you step in the picture. She's 5 years old. You step into the picture. She doesn't like you. She don't want to talk to you. She don't want to be around you. She just want to be around her daddy. Now, this is going to be difficult because if she was 5 years old in her family of origin or her nuclear family, you wouldn't have those issues because that's her mom and that's her dad. And we talked before about the bonding. But when you're in a step family, you have those issues. So this is what I mean by you have to look at things differently and have an open mind. So now you have to realize I have to figure out how to communicate with her. I have to figure out what is it I need to do to be able to at least be able to communicate to a degree that if I need her to do something, or if I want to take her somewhere or whatever, that we have this mutual conversation going on. That's not something that you had to figure out in your nuclear family. It just happened. But in a blended family, you have to do things differently. So now I have to figure it out. So now I have to have a goal. And now I have to have steps. And I know sometimes in a blended family, people don't want to stop and say, I need to spend time with this child. It's like either they like me or they don't. I'm not going to spend time trying to make this child like me. But in a blended family, that's exactly what you have to do. I shouldn't have to cater to this child. I'm the adult, they're the child. And so this is what I mean by you have to be open-minded and you have to think differently. Yes, we know in a nuclear family, you probably wouldn't spend all that time with your 5-year-old. It's like either you do it or you go to your room, or you do it or you don't get a snack. But in a blended family, you can't do that, because when you do that, there's another part that's happening, and I cover that in another workshop. What you're doing is you're actually not depositing things in her life. You're actually removing things out of her life, things that are going to bond her to you. So it's different, that your mind has to be more open and realize that even though I'm the adult, I don't want to say win over this child, but I have to be more loving and more caring, because there's a lot going on with that child. Remember, her mom and her dad, they're not together. Maybe they've been living together from the time she was born till she was 5 years old, and all of a sudden they're not together. So now there's that grief going on because mom and dad are not together. And then now the child's traditions that she used to have, maybe every time dad came home, he would sit down and read a story with her before she went to bed. Well, that's gone because he's not there anymore at the house. Or maybe every weekend they went to the park. Well, now that's not there anymore. So there's a loss for her. And then also you have to understand that she may feel like it's because of you. If you weren't here, mom and dad would be back together. So it's a lot of things going on with the child. So that's why I say you have to be open-minded and look at things differently, because it's not like the nuclear family. I can guarantee you that when a child has been in the family with their parent, there is a loss when they separate. Whether it's a divorce or they're no longer living together, they absolutely experience a loss. And a lot of times, adults don't look at that. They don't look at the child has experienced a loss. All they know is we're together and you need to get it together too. But you have to realize that you have to look differently at the situation. Mindset shift number 2 is you have to choose to approach the situation. You have to choose to approach the situation and have a positive mindset that things are going to work out. Things are going to get better. I'm going to meet this goal that whatever I'm trying to do. So it's one thing to say, yeah, I know I need to bond with my bonus daughter, but I tried 2-3 times. She just doesn't want to do it, so I'm going to give up. The mindset is you have to continue to choose to approach the situation. You have to continue. It's going to take time. That's where it goes back to that other unrealistic expectation that it's not going to take that long. It's absolutely going to take time. It's going to take time for you to be able to bond with your bonus children. It's not going to happen overnight. I heard someone say another statement that if you think about this, it makes sense. They say, do everything differently. So whatever you did in your last relationship, do something different in this relationship. The reason why you'll do everything differently is because the other one didn't work. If you do things the same way you did in the other relationship, guess what you're going to end up with? Probably the same thing. Because even though this is a different person, remember I said it's a lot more balls that you're juggling now. So you got the kid. And if you do the same thing if you do it the same way, then you're probably going to get the same results. If you do things differently, then the probability of getting different results is very high. Those are some of the things, the 2 things today out of the 4 that I think that if you really look at those, that it's going to change your relationship. If you understand the expectations and look at the expectations, see, are they unrealistic? And also the second one is changing your mindset, understanding that things have to change and I have to be open to it. And also understanding that I have to do things differently. Russ says, things you take for granted with your bio kids will be misunderstood by the step kids. Ooh, that's a good one. What do you mean by things you take for granted with your? Could you give me an example of something that you would take for granted with your bio kids that would be misunderstood by your stepkids? And that's another one too, while you're writing that, is that because you have this relationship formed with your bio kids, and I said things happen organically, they know you. They know that when you raise your voice, that doesn't mean you hate them. They just know that that means you're frustrated. Whereas your bonus kids, if you raise your voice at them, they may take that as you hate them, you don't like them. So that's a good one, because that just reinforces what we're talking about, is that it's going to take time for them to even get to know you. It takes longer. Like your bio kids, they know you're frustrated, that you don't hate them, that you're just frustrated, and they'll get over it quicker. But the step kids, seems like they hold on to it. And even if you tell them, no, that's not what I mean, it's like you have to like nurture that with them and nurture them so they can see that that's really not who you are. So yeah, it takes a little bit longer, and they may feel wounded by what the step parent says. And in a normal nuclear situation, their father or mother could have said the same thing and it would just roll off of them. But because the step parent said it, it seems like it takes a different turn and it goes deeper. So this is part one. And so, like I said, I'm going to try to get this going with the Zoom link for tomorrow. If not, I'm start much earlier. If not, I'll be streaming in live again. So hopefully you're getting some value from this. If you are, just drop it in the link. I mean, drop it in the comments that you watched it, you got value from it.